market breaking 2 days off an upward trend yesterday. Again, expectation, anticipation seem to actually be dictating the trading pattern at the moment.
Yes, it is. I think what we're seeing is that, for example, when there's a worthy news story like Flour Mill's results, you see more activity in the market, and so that UBA results as well. You see more activity in the market. But apart from those results coming through, there's nothing really to energize investors into the market. So that's why they have the volatility we do see.
Well, results aside for flour mills, there was that announcement of shareholder seeking shareholder approval for a 70 billion naira debt issuance program. Your reaction to that announcement?
I think it's very good. I mean, what the government and the regulators are trying to encourage is the corporate debt market. And flour mills is probably a top corporate in Nigeria. And so for flour mills to look at having a debt issuance program would definitely deepen the market and lessen the reliance on FGM paper. Flour mills is a solid company with solid results, and I think the debt program will be well subscribed to.
This, of course, is the first firm outside of the banking sector to announce, plans for a bond issue, a corporate bond. And you're saying that you're anticipating some kind of positive uptake to it. Taking a look at the overall industry, though, do you see this starting to pave the way for other companies taking this on as an option to raise capital moving forward?
I think other companies will look at how successful the flour mill's operation is. If the flour mill's debt issuance program is successful, I think it will encourage other companies to take the leap of faith. Because at the moment, one of the major problems in Nigerian finances, especially company finances, is transparency. And having a public debt issuance program will increase the transparency of finances. So other corporates have to take the effects of having more transparency in their financing against whether they're being successful or not, because usually they have bilateral agreements with banks which are kept shrouded in secrecy and which a lot of the companies prefer.
Well, as the deepening of the market occurs over on that end, we've seen the Business Day this morning run with the headline that the federal government is mulling the fact that we're going to possibly be looking at compelling some of the oil majors and telecommunications firms to list their shares on the NSE, that being seen as a way to grow the economy before the close of President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure. What have you made of that, and how do you see companies actually reacting to that, that coming to the fore?
I think it's a laudable idea, but I think the federal government and the regulators need to get things in proper perspective and get things done properly first. You want to encourage more deepening of the market and more confidence in the market, but you haven't pushed through the reforms that everyone's expecting SEC and the NSE to make in the market. You still have the same market makeup, the same possible players in the market that people blame for parts of the reason for the crash that happened in the market. And unless you sort that out, you're not going to increase investor confidence. Now, going on to encouraging companies to list in Nigeria, I think is laudable. But what most analysts like myself have been trying to push the government regulators to do is to encourage companies that are listed in their home countries, the likes of MTN, Shell, that are listed in their home countries, to also list in Nigeria. If you're a private company like Globalcom or any other private company that is not listed in their home countries, I don't think you should push them to list in Nigeria, because it might be the strategy not to be listed.
Yeah.
But if they're listed, like MTN listed in South Africa, there should be no reason why they cannot be listed in Nigeria. And then when you push that forward in together with trying to get, especially the likes of Shell, trying to get all communities more say and in how Shell runs its operations. If Shell is listed in Nigeria, all communities will be able to invest using that 10% that the government says they're going to give them in JV operations, some of that money, to invest in Shell and have more of a say in how Shell runs operations in their communities.
Yeah. Well, talking about transparency of companies, I mean, we've also got the CBN seeming to have made a pretty big U-turn on new guidelines. I mean, we've had headlines say that it's backpedaled on its directive that banks should disclose executive compensation and bonuses in their annual accounts. A good move in your books, or was that initial assumption the correct one to be taking?
What we're seeing globally really is there's a move towards more transparency on executive pay. I think any move that goes against that is not a good move for the Nigerian economy, because what we want is more transparency. And what we want is more linking the executive pay to performance. I think once you see that, shareholders not do not mind paying executives as long as it goes with performance. And if the global best practice, for example, you had Marks and Spencer's, their investors agreeing to pay quite a large sum to the Marks and Spencer chairman, but over 90% of the investors agreed to that because it's a transparent way of saying, look, if it's linked to performance, we don't mind paying that, but not have a opaque system where we're not sure how executives are paid and there's no performance to go with it.
Yeah, well, certainly if there's one thing, that the banking crisis has managed to enforce is that we need to evaluate the performance of these companies very rigorously. Taking a look at some of those banks, it's been pretty volatile within the banking space, really coming under pressure yesterday, despite the couple of few performances that came to the fore. What's your view on some of the activity we're seeing there at the moment, Kayode?
I think as we approach the reporting season, because most banks are going to report on the 30th of June results, I think UBA started the trend. They're showing a move back to profit. We really need to dissect the financials to see how much of that move to profit was because they had low revenue growth. So we want to see how much of that move to profits from release of provisions. For example, the announcement that VNA, the new owners of VNA, which is now called Air Nigeria, have repaid the over $200 million they owed UBA. So that's what fed through to the increased profit picture. But I think overall, people are looking to those result seasons and trying to gauge which banks are going to do better than the others. I think they also play into that. There'll be some stories from some of the rescued banks about interest in mergers and acquisitions by some of the other banks and private equity firms. I think that's also encouraging some moves in that sector. But I think overall, everyone is still waiting on AMCON and a clear direction on how AMCON will be structured, how much a loans is going to take, and at what price.